On the 13th of January 2024, Manchester City were trailing Newcastle United 2-1 at St James's Park. The first 69 minutes of this match had been characteristic of City so far that season. One of little cutting edge and a general vulnerability that made many fans think that the team who had won the treble the year before had finally run out of gas and ideas. But with just over 20 minutes to go, Kevin De Bruyne came on as a substitute for his first Premier League appearance since August, after returning from a hamstring injury. And just 5 minutes later, he collected the ball and drove forward towards the penalty area before side-footing a crisp finish just inside the near post, out of the reach of goalkeeper Martin Dubravka. And then in stoppage time, he caressed a classic perfectly weighted pass into the box for substitute Oscar Bobb to score his first Premier League goal and complete this amazing comeback. It left the football world shaking its head. In many fans' eyes, Manchester City's faltering that season would now instantly stop. Many claim the title race was now over, despite this victory leaving City 2 points behind league leaders Liverpool. It also left many finally realising that KDB deserves to be talked about in the upper echelons of Premier League legends. He was, after all, at this point, a 5-time Premier League champion and City's most impactful player in the league for close to a decade. This is some claim, especially for a player who throughout his Manchester City career has had 15 injuries. At the time of recording, the 2023-24 season is De Bruyne's 9th season in the Premier League. And because of this latest injury he's had to come back from, it means it will be the 4th season of his City career where he has only played 25 league games or less out of the possible 38. He has also had the heartbreak of being substituted in 2 Champions League finals due to injuries. For every athlete, injury is the toughest mental challenge they will ever face. And those who suffer many injuries all too often become ground down over time and their careers slowly fade out. But very few athletes, the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, somehow come back from injuries, including very serious ones, like nothing has happened. They instantly slot back in to perform their very best or even better than before. Why is this? Well, it's because of arguably the most important thing athletes need to build if they're to 1, make it to the highest level, and 2, stay at that level, despite the inevitable obstacles and hurdles thrown their way. Whether it's injuries, being benched, or just missing the cut for a team or competition, if you build this thing, you will become one of the few who keep getting back up despite all the punches to the face. And what is this thing? Well, you're going to want to watch the rest of this video very carefully, because I'll be sharing what it is, why it's so key, and most importantly, how you can start building it today. So let's get started. So what if you had the ability to bounce back from any setback or disappointment? What if you were not fazed by any challenge? And what if you found it easy instead of difficult to keep grinding away towards your goals day after day for years on end? Well, if you could do all of these things, psychologists would call you David Goggins.
I'm back, motherfucker! I'm back!
I'm kidding. The ability to consistently do all of these things are actually symptoms of being mentally resilient. Quite simply, mental resilience can be seen as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. This can be about bouncing back from such things in sport for sure, but it can also relate to any stressful domain in life, such as family and relationship problems, serious health problems, or workplace and financial stresses. Because look, we all face these things in our lives and careers at some point. It's a guarantee, especially if you're someone reaching for a goal that less than 1% of people will actually achieve, like becoming a professional athlete or winning an Olympic gold medal. There are no perfectly upward trajectories in the pursuit of something so lofty. The pathway often involves a couple of steps forward, followed by a few that are sideways, and then one back. And unless you are mentally resilient, then you will step off that path completely because you can't cope with the frustration and pain that comes with trudging along it. At times, the pathway is clear and feels like walking on silky sand. Other times, it's enveloped in fog and feels like walking on hot coals. And unfortunately, most athletes will tap out at this point. Without a high level of mental resilience, there are 3 performance-killing outcomes that ruin the career of an athlete. The first is decreased ability to perform under pressure. The elite are known for being able to perform their absolute best even during the most high-pressure situations. But without mental resilience, you have no chance of rising to such occasions. The inability to manage stress and maintain focus leads to mistakes, poor decision-making, and an overall decline in performance. You become plagued with doubt, resistance, and fear that you don't have what it takes to be able to push that extra bit harder. Second, athletes lacking mental resilience face an increased vulnerability to burnout. Training and performing week after week, month after month, and season after season means that athletes face an incredible amount of stress in their daily lives. And if you don't have the ability to adapt and cope with such continual stress, you're destined to experience burnout, which is characterized by physical and emotional exhaustion, reduced motivation, and a sense of delusionment with your sport. Over time, this causes you to increase your likelihood of getting ill or injured because your immune system is compromised from the chronic stress that you've been unable to sufficiently cope with. And then lastly, as a direct follow-on from burnout, without mental resilience, you experience diminished passion and enthusiasm. It's those times where training and performing is no longer fun. It feels like a chore. The midpoint of the season where you feel like you're running on empty, when wins don't even feel that good and losses can become a lot more easy to accept. It becomes impossible to convince your mind and body that you need to keep pushing. But the mentally resilient athlete, however, is a master of fighting off these performance killers. They've mastered the general mindset and specific strategies to remain energized and enthused right the way from game 1 to game 80 of the season. They can keep optimistic despite the never-ending game of snakes and ladders that sport is. So you're now asking, well, how exactly do they do this? Well, it largely depends on the individual because every athlete is unique in their own way. And if you want to build true mental resilience, you need a personalized strategy. This is something I help athletes with through my one-to-one coaching program, Peak Performer, which I've just had some slots open up for. So if you want to build an elite mentality that will propel you towards your biggest performance goals, then you can apply using the link in the description. But for now, let me give you 3 strategies that will get you started on your journey to becoming a truly mentally resilient athlete. The first is the self-talk coin. Whenever facing setbacks in sport, it's instinctive for your mind to become preoccupied with negatives. That's just human nature. We have a negativity bias. And this does protect us in some ways, but it can also be hugely detrimental in others. So it's important when we face stressful and painful moments that, yes, we recognize that pain and frustration, but then do our best to acknowledge the other side of the coin. Back to Kevin De Bruyne and his 5-month injury layoff. He admitted in an interview with The Independent that being injured was incredibly frustrating, but he decided to turn the disadvantage into an advantage. He said, "I could enjoy the things I've not been able to do with my family and friends, and took it that way. Maybe it was good for me to reset a little bit in a way, and take care of myself when it is not really possible during the year." In embracing this injury as an opportunity in some ways, this made KDB's rehab work easier to do. The injury built up a needed period of time to miss football, so that when he came back, he was refreshed, raring to go, and have that immediate impact that he did against Newcastle. So the next time you face a setback or particularly stressful moment that causes you to naturally think of the negatives, ask yourself the simple question of, what's on the other side of the coin? And from that question, force yourself to think of any positives, even if you don't 100% believe them to be positive at that point. Injuries are opportunities to get stronger by finally taking gym and recovery more seriously. And getting benched is an opportunity to watch the guy or girl who got picked ahead of you and really study their game so that you can spot limitations and make those things your strengths. This, like anything else, takes practice and effort, but it builds that mental muscle at the heart of resilience. And the second thing is find an anchor. An anchor roots you and grounds you, which is super important when, as an athlete, you face the choppy waters of unpredictability. It's easy to get battered by the storm of obstacles, hurdles, setbacks, and stresses. But an anchor keeps you rooted and present to withstand those moments so that you can still perform optimally or come back stronger next time. This anchor can be many different things, but it needs to be something that you can engage in ritualistically in certain situations that tend to make you stressed, and its effect is to calm you down and fill you with a touch more confidence. One of the best examples of this is NBA players and their free throw routines. One personal favorite of mine is Jason Kidd, who for a while would blow a kiss to the bucket before shooting. Apparently he did this as a gesture to his wife and kids, which would help him feel much calmer in that moment to execute. And this is the same as athletes pointing to the sky, either seeking comfort from God or a loved one who's passed away. Other anchors can be simply taking a few deep breaths like Ronaldo does before free kicks or penalties. Or it could be a short mantra that you say to yourself. Mental resilience is largely about your belief in your ability to handle and stay in control during stressful situations. And your anchor is something that gives you an increased sense of control, which ultimately prevents you from being phased during those toughest, most pressurized moments. And the third thing to engage in is pressure desensitization. The reason certain people are able to handle the most stressful situations with exceptional resilience is because they've experienced them time and time again. They've practiced almost infinite times under pressure or in situations that closely mirror game day as much as possible. The greatest example I've ever come across relating to this isn't actually from sport. It's from the 1969 Apollo 11 mission to the moon. Throughout the entire mission, all 3 astronauts' average heart rates were normal. Neil Armstrong stayed highest at 71, Michael Collins was 60, and Buzz Aldrin's was 67. Compare that with the typical heart rate of a person walking around on Earth, which ranges from between 60 and 100 beats per minute. So imagine getting blown into space in a rocket, experiencing a crazy amount of G-force for a mission that Armstrong himself only believed had a 50-50 chance of success, and then still keep a pretty much resting heart rate. How did they do this? Well, every aspect of that mission was simulated as realistically as possible. NASA even built giant models of the moon to show astronauts what the surface looked like from orbit, and simulated a lunar landscape so that they could practice collecting soil and rock samples. The rocket cockpits the astronauts trained in were identical in every way to the real thing, with the exact same switches, dials, and displays. And they underwent hundreds, if not thousands, of practice hours with trainers who would simulate different failure scenarios to see how the three men would respond during problems with the mission scenarios. This meant every single move and action of that mission had already been completed countless times before, and explains why those three men managed to keep their cool during one of the craziest and scariest things a human could ever do. Mental resilience is all about conditioning. Conditioning yourself to handle increasing levels of stress over time so that come the real thing, you can remain as cool as a cucumber. So ask yourself the simple question of, how can I replicate in-game pressure into my training? The more you do this, the more resilient you'll become. A lot of this really relies on you being able to change the way that you think about stress and how to use it as a fuel for success. To find out how to do this, watch this next video here.